you had books and then you had ebooks. You had mail and then you had email. You had gold and now you have e-gold.
More and more people are buying and holding Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Let's take a look at Bitcoin.
Some call this digital gold.
Everybody should probably have 1% of their assets in Bitcoin.
Dear crypto community and blockchain waves across the globe, welcome back to Kryptonites, the No BS blockchain channel built with the community and for the community. And today we have another mind-blowing guest, Beniamin Mincu, the founder and CEO of Elrond, one of the most interesting and exciting projects of 2020. Beniamin, such a pleasure to have you. How are you doing today?
Great, really great to be here, Alex, and have this conversation.
Congratulations on all your success this year so far. Beniamin, you guys have been doing tremendous work. But before jumping into Elrond, I'd love to ask you, what inspired you, Beniamin? Was it a person? Was it Bitcoin? Was it a blockchain? Why did you end up, coming into this crazy space?
Indeed, it was, I believe, 2012 when I initially stumbled into Bitcoin, but then in 2013, it really was extremely intriguing to me how technology was combined in a way where economics was also there. So this currency drew a lot of attention. It grew a lot, much like the early days of the internet, when the internet grew at a very, very significant speed. And I began researching what was happening there. I was specifically at that point researching technologies that I thought were capable of changing the dynamics of our economy and of the entire society. And so Bitcoin was this really intriguing idea that looked like almost like a joke, a game. And when you understood its economics, it was clear that it could reshape the economy. So at that point, I wanted to dig in a lot more and see what was happening in the space. And then immediately afterwards, in probably 6 months, at the beginning of 2014, I essentially joined the NEM core team to try to solve some of the issues that I saw in Bitcoin even at that point. So it was a very, very interesting start. And since that point, I've been indeed involved in several different aspects of the blockchain space. So I've been building, on the one hand, different startups and helping invest in more than 20 or 30 startups in the space. And then since the end of 2017, my whole focus was basically on Elrond, where we've built this really hardcore team with which we can literally build rockets, and then focused on building the technology and bringing it to the market. So yeah, a long story there, but I believe that without that backstory, we would not have been here today.
That's fantastic, Beniamin. And it's typical from most engineers to always want to solve problems, right? To get into things because they find it very interesting and want to solve problems. And we'll talk about the problems that you guys are solving. But before we jump into that, I'd love to ask you about this whole internet or Web 3.0. What exactly does that mean, if you don't mind educating us, going from Web 1.0, which some people call a database, all the way to Web 3.0, which some people call a data bank. But what is it in your terms, this whole Internet of Scale and this Web 3.0 concept?
I think very briefly, Internet 1.0 was this idea that you had a first network of networks through which you could share some information in the sense of very low bandwidth, low speed. And with this, you could still see what you could build on the internet, but it was still very, very rudimentary. The second wave or Web 2 was much more social. You had high bandwidth already, and then economics started to make sense, but then everything shifted toward the social aspects. And now we're at the point where for the first time we have an automatic protocol that fits and can be embedded in the core of the internet to enable transfer of value. So while I believe that we've been able to transfer data, very rudimentary forms of data from the beginning, and then increase the speed and possibilities and move to social with the Web 2, everything in Web 3 is first about finance and what it means to basically encode finance in the base layer of the internet. And then, of course, to extend this to trustless exchange of any kind of value that we can now exchange over the internet.
Very nicely put. I love it, Beniamin. Thank you so much for such a great answer. And obviously, you talked about this evolution, and there's Ethereum as well, right? Who claim themselves or want to build this Web 3.0. But as you know, there have been many issues recently: congested networks, really high gas fees, and a lot of people are interested in hearing what is a comparison between Ethereum and Elrond. If you don't mind sharing that, that would be great.
Yeah, I would say that Ethereum has been trying to build state sharding and proof of stake for at least 4 or 5 years now. They've been typically always 2 years away. So no matter how much progress they made or how little progress they made, they always said that it's 2 years away. For Elrond, we've been working on a very key part of technology that we believe can finally transition everything we have in the blockchain space to a broadband era, so that you can process transactions of any kind and exchange value at the internet scale, which means that you finally have broadband speed, really, really low cost, and can build anything you want just because the architecture allows you to do this. We've been working on this since almost 3 years now, but the most important thing about Elrond is that the technology is live. Compared to all the other projects that might promise different things but never deliver, we've made a really, really huge step forward with the mainnet that we've released on the 30th of July. Our entire team has poured their souls into this. And now with the technology live, we are also building a user interface that intends to simplify the whole experience around this. Now, coming back to Ethereum and the comparison between Elrond and Ethereum, there are several aspects there. First, I would say that Ethereum will have some very, very important difficulties of changing their the way they work, just because they already have an architecture that has fairly large adoption in the small space that we have, and changing a technology while it's working is very similar to driving a car and then trying to change the engine while you keep driving around and so forth. It's super, super difficult from an engineering perspective. And given that they have some incentives for miners and so forth to not move to the new model that would eliminate millions of dollars that the miners have invested in that, there are also some conflicts of interests there. But going beyond this, everything that Ethereum intends to do with Ethereum 2.0, Elrond already has working, which is I think extremely important. I'm not sure who will wait another 2 years for Ethereum to ship. But the differences in technology are also interesting, because the key point for Elrond is we have what is called adaptive state sharding. And the accent is on adaptive because it means that Elrond can start with 2 shards and process more than 10,000 transactions per second. But the number of shards can increase with the demand that we really have in the network, which means that we're not only scalable and adaptive, but also very resource efficient. It means that we don't have to start with 100 shards if there is no demand for 100 shards. And I think this is the largest of the differences. Ethereum also tries to do state sharding. They try to do proof of stake. But the point of the matter is that at this point, they only have something very, very rudimentary with which they're playing. And given what we've been through with our architecture, they're still years away of coming to production with that part.
So that meaning of adaptive state sharding, like how would you explain this in layman terms? Like if my grandma Susie was watching the show, Beniamin, how would you explain what adaptive state sharding is at Elrond?
Sure. So very briefly, sharding, this idea of sharding exists already in databases. It means that you have this process of dividing and conquering and then parallelizing things. So instead of processing them in a serial sequence, you have this parallel processing unit, which allows you to move a lot faster. And then adaptivity on top of that means that you only need to add number of shards proportional to the demand you have in the network. For each shard, we gain something like 5,000 transactions per second. So we estimated that with 10,000 transactions per second, we are already 1,000 times more efficient than Bitcoin or Ethereum, which is a lot more than is needed at this point. The demand might be there, and we might need to update this in a few months. But at this point, this is something extremely, extremely important from a processing capacity. So we're excited to have this in Elrond.
Very nicely explained. Thank you so much for that, Beniamin. And the next question would be related to virtual machines. First of all, if you could explain virtual machines in a simple term. And is the Elrond and Ethereum virtual machine similar or a little bit different at the moment?
The idea of blockchain can be seen in a few different ways, but essentially, compared to normal databases, blockchains are databases that are operated in a distributed fashion. So while Amazon has a database that they can essentially share with everyone, but they're the owner, blockchains are this larger databases that are operated by a lot of different third parties in self-interested way, where the incentives of the network allow people to organize, and there's no trusted party that controls the entire network. Now, moving one step further, once you understand that even the most advanced blockchains have this kind of network property of being very similar to a database, there are some interesting properties that a blockchain has, which is transparency, immutability, and censorship resistance, and so forth. But then on top of this, you have a way of programming different aspects within this blockchain. And this programming layer is called the virtual machine. So it essentially allows you to execute some super simple programs just as you would on a computer. But you have to assume that still with the earliest versions of the virtual machine from Ethereum, you still have some bandwidth limitation. Again, just because the underlying database has the limitations, the virtual machine will inherit the limitations as well. So in Elrond, what we're doing specifically is we have this super high performance architecture, and then the virtual machine is again inheriting some of the performance that the architecture has, so things become a lot more interesting. As for differences, we have, instead of going with the Ethereum virtual machine, the Elrond virtual machine is built on top of WASM. So this means that people in the blockchain space with background, or from outside of the blockchain space with background in programming languages such as C, C++, or Rust, can build smart contracts on Elrond a lot easier than they would on Ethereum. And it also means that further down the road, we will enable them to build smart contracts in even more languages and make things even more simple for them.
Very nicely put, Beniamin. So is it fair to say that, for example, if a smart contract is a document with information, that a virtual machine is kind of like a cyber agent, the person who's passing it on within that network? Is that a simple way or accurate way?
Yes, it's like indeed a processing machine, but the idea is that the virtual machine does not only pass the information here and there, but also can code a way in which the information is passed. So you can both say, please bring this information to from A to B, but then also say, let's do it such that we only bring the information from A to B when I received this type of money from A, and when B has some particular criteria that we want to be met.
Oh, so that virtual machine can actually optimize the transaction as well, not just pass it on to another agent.
Exactly. Define an algorithm for how the transaction should be executed. Like you can build an escrow, you can build several different criteria that have to be met, and only at that point the transaction is triggered. And it essentially allows you to build a much richer ecosystem already, because you also can go one step backward and say, if you look at Bitcoin, there is no virtual machine. There is no programmability. So things can be a lot worse than they are right now, especially if you look at Bitcoin. Then if you look at what we have right now, there's clearly room for improvement. And this is what we're trying to do with Elrond.
You know, that's really cool that you're doing your best to accommodate a platform and an interface that is easy for engineers, right? Not having to learn a new language and use the languages that most people are familiar with. And that's a perfect segue to Maiar, right? The new user interface that you guys have built. Could you tell us a little bit more and why you're doing this? Is this mainly for getting more and more engineers to contribute to your ecosystem?
Sure. The whole point of Elrond is essentially that we're trying to build this global, transparent, non-inflationary financial system. And this is what we're trying to do with Elrond Network. This is the basis for Elrond Network. And second, what we are trying to do is give anyone, anywhere, easy access to this new financial system. The only way we can do this is by first building this high bandwidth, low latency, high security, low cost network that is already running with Elrond. But then what we've discovered is that we need to come up with a breakthrough that is equally powerful in terms of user experience, so that all the key features that we have in the blockchain that we've built, we want to take them and put them in a interface that is extremely simple, that abstracts away the entire complexity. And if you have a username called a hero tag, you'll essentially be able to send money to anyone. It's super easy. And of course, you'll be able to stake, you'll be able to lend, and we'll have several other applications that we can build only because we have both the blockchain and this very simple user interface. But the key point with Maiar is, if we think that we really want to bring blockchain to the next billion people, and escape this narrow group of people that we are just exchanging money with currently in the blockchain space, then it's super necessary to forget everything we know in terms of complexity and forget all these things that we've got used to, and simplify things so that our grandmothers and our parents can interact with them without even knowing what's underneath. Because if you look right now at how email works, nobody really knows that you're using the SMTP protocol. What they know is email is super useful. It's much more useful compared to the normal mailing system. So this is what they're going to discover through Maillard, that essentially everything they've got used to transferring money via banks or other means, they can finally do it a lot faster, so near instantly, anywhere in the world at 100x lower cost than any other alternative. So we are super excited about this.
That's a nice transition to the ERD coin and token. You guys also launched your mainnet. Congratulations for achieving that. And a lot of people are really excited about what's coming in the future for Elrond. But if you don't mind telling us a little bit about the ERD coin or token, the current utilities, the future utilities, how you see the token evolving in the future, that would be absolutely great.
Sure. So the most important thing is that from the ERD, we are moving to EGLD. EGLD is this new standard that we're trying to position. So things are extremely simple, again, to convey, because think about it for a second. If you need to explain to your grandmother, or I need to explain to my parents what Bitcoin is, even the name cries out complexity, right? But if you start with something like EGLD, things are already super simple, because you can start and say something like you had books and then you had ebooks, you had mail and then you had email, you had gold, and now you have EGLD. This is the currency that will become a digital reserve for the entire Elrond ecosystem. This will power the entire ecosystem. But then we're, of course, having staking on top of it. We're having a swap that is essentially being done at the beginning of September through Binance, and then several exchanges and partners that we've partnered with and we're already working with. And based on this, we're also going to release a lot of collaborations and partnerships that will allow people in the Elrond ecosystem to not only stake as they do right now, but also have lending, have exchange possibility in different ways, and then have access to some of the most advanced DeFi options in the space. So we're very excited about this move. This is a bit of a friction at the point where you're making the change, but we are proactively trying to manage this by clarifying things, simplifying things, and we're very confident that once you have 1 month pass, you'll look back and basically no one will even remember the past. Everything they'll see is how simple things are, how easy it is to communicate, convey, and this is the key value that we want to build Elrond around. And we're happy with the progress that we're making.
That sounds absolutely great. And thank you, Beniamin, for always mentioning to make it easy for grandmas, right? Grandma Susie needs something easy.
Yeah, definitely.
And one last question I'd love to ask you, since you guys, I guess you'd be consider yourself as a third generation blockchain, right? As the latest generation of blockchains. As of today, obviously life is not perfect, right? There are always challenges ahead of us, which is great, right? That's what makes it fun. What do you see as the kryptonite of third generation blockchains? What is the current problem that you really want to solve to reach that, that whole ecosystem for the masses, and not have, only geeks, like you said, have a very closed group?
I believe there are two very, very important problems that are necessary to be solved in order for us to reach the 1 billion people that we're targeting. First of all, there's a clear necessity to move to an internet scale blockchain. And this is what we have with Elrond. Unless you can process transactions at super high speed with very high bandwidth and very low cost, you cannot build anything on the blockchain. Everything remains a toy. But having this solved is not sufficient, right? You need to move one step further, and what will become obvious during the next weeks and months, especially with Maiar coming out, is how large the elephant in the room is when it comes to complexity and user experience. So by far, I believe the whole discussion will shift immediately after people realize that we've solved the technical problems. The whole discussion will shift around user experience, because this is the main important limitation that has kept the blockchain space to 50 million people after so many years. If you can reduce this complexity and make things super simple and obvious, at that point we'll be able to 10x the number of people or 20x the number of people, so that the whole space will have a very, very different growth factor, a very, very different quantity of people, and very interesting and different tools that come out of so many contributions from the people who join.
Nice. I love it. I love it, Beniamin. Fantastic answers. And we're so happy to have people like you, builders and problem solvers, that got you into the space and is still pushing you to continue to move the space forward and reach the masses. And all of these chains, like you said, even DeFi, they need that type of blockchain of scale or internet of scale to actually achieve all these accomplishments. Beniamin, thank you so much for your time today. If we want to follow you, where are you the most active these days? Obviously, we'll put a link for the Elrond website in the description box below, guys, so don't forget to check that. But where are you the most active these days? I see you on Twitter quite often.
Yes, Twitter, I think, would be the best place to look. Definitely check elrond.com, definitely check Maiar.com. Things are moving really fast in our community, so we welcome any feedback, and very curious to hear how you guys think about these things.
Definitely, we'll check into that, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below if you have any questions for Beniamin. He's a very busy man, but we'll try to get back to you with an answer. And join us every Wednesday, premiering at a PC near you, 8 o'clock BST. Thanks so much, and see you next week, guys.
Thank you.